I am the founder and CEO of the CyberTree Paradox, and I'm currently based in Dubai. What inspired me to code? I think at a really young age, and I grew up in the early 80s. So for me, having access to a computer, the first computer I ever got was a VIC-20. It was basically really simple games you could play on this VIC-20 with cassettes. However, the computer would allow you to write really basic code, and so I was just really intrigued by coding when I was probably about 7 or 8, and then really took a shine to it, when I was about 13 or 14, and it just seemed like an amazing thing. You could create things from lines of code, and I was very good at it. So one of the very first applications I ever built was to help me solve a maths problem. I actually wrote this code in BASIC that allowed me to solve trigonometry issues I couldn't do by myself. So it was easier for me to write a piece of code that helped me do that than do the maths. So I never went to university. I went into the workplace straight out of college, and I was working for a software house actually, where we were designing invoices, and it's actually on the HP 3000 system. So anyone that's old enough to know what an HP 3000 is, it's like huge, thousands and thousands of lines of code. And my job responsibility at that point was just about, creating boxes. So if you ever remember the old DHL invoices that used to sit on the top end of your packages, you'll find this very automated way of they would print text and things inside. I used to design the box around the text. I spent a couple of years doing that for the software house, and then worked in Reuters and Dow Jones for a little bit, doing some additional development stuff. And then my really first opportunity in cybersecurity came sort of tail end of the 90s in Deutsche Bank, where I ended up working as a security administrator. And that was really the very, very first real security job I got. I was extremely lucky because I was working for two very, very talented and inspiring guys at the time, who were kind enough to help me forge a career. And funny enough, I thanked one of them a couple of weeks ago, just to say that actually, if it wasn't for his guidance at that point in time and his inspiration and the way he led, I probably wouldn't have had a very successful career in cybersecurity. So yeah, it was an amazing introduction into what it meant to be in this profession. I think if you've got inspiring people that are there really just to show you the way and lead you forward, and they truly think that success is built upon partnerships, right? And how to direct teams in the right way. So I think I learned a lot in terms of, the difference between management and leadership, and it stuck with me, throughout my career. And just treating people with a level of dignity and respect, I think, is also really important. As much as learning about the discipline itself, I think is really important. So yeah, I think it's stuck with me, and I think it's important to take people along on that journey. And I've done it as part of my career, where you meet very talented and successful people, but also give opportunities for those that are potentially, going to struggle getting in. So I'm a big advocate for providing support in those areas where I can. It depends, I suppose, on the organization. I mean, a chief information security officer, it's an interesting job title, and it's something that it's a bit legacy, because, I think it came from the Star Trek days where we, thought it was cool being called a chief engineer. But actually, there's a multifaceted role to the CISO, and one fundamental truth is it is not about technology, and I think this is really misunderstood generally. A chief information security's primary responsibility is about protecting a business, and that means looking at it from a business perspective. It should be an integral part of your business operations. But another way to look at it is about risk. It's about effective governance and oversight, and having good risk management capabilities and good technical response. And you need to separate the two out. As a leader, I would say that information security should effectively form part of your executive suite. If it isn't, you fundamentally have to ask yourself and your organization, why is that the case? Do they still see it as a very technically related discipline? And for some, it can be very technical. But the discipline itself is so large, there is no way that one individual will have that breadth and depth of knowledge. But I think for those that work in that space and understand risk control, compliance, and effective education, your primary role is an ambassador to the business, and making sure that the businesses are making informed decisions about how they protect what they feel is confidential, what they feel is important, and how you then apply that to technology, and making sure your control environments are adequate, they're designed correctly, they're operationally effective, and having a really good grasp on technology, and making sure that you can take what can be a very complicated and confusing subject and distill it into something that's plain and simple. So you're an advocate to the board, you're a supporter to that exec committee, you're leading a team, but hopefully you're impacting an organization through education and training and awareness, but also through cultural change. And, information security and cybersecurity is a cultural issue. We truly understand how to protect our own data, but it seems that we forget that when we get into an organization. We think, a corporate doesn't need the same level of protection. So a couple of things, really. One, I think the pandemic changed a lot for me. After having worked in industry as a CISO for sort of the last 15 years, and having a grasp on some of the stuff that we do, a lot of things changed with the pandemic. A lot of things changed with Brexit. And so I wanted to create something new. So I went out there and had a look at what was out there in terms of digital content. What are people talking about? What videos are out there, and actually, what are we doing from a service point of view? And to my amazement, I couldn't really find good quality content in the way that I think we've been a bit spoiled, with Amazon and Netflix. So this quality production issue was always stuck in my head. Can we find something that is truly digestible in a documentary format? And because of the pandemic, a lot of the work that I'd been doing had kind of dried up. So I did a pitch and said, would anyone be interested in filming a documentary? And so I was lucky enough to get picked up by a cybersecurity supplier who I'm working with at the moment. And we've currently filmed 3 episodes of this ongoing documentary, and we're just about to film the 4th. We did the first one on threat intelligence, which was amazing, which we did after lockdown 1.0. My view is I want to make information security accessible to everybody, not just for those that work in the cybersecurity community. And I'm on this mission now to make sure that it's digestible and understandable to the C-suite, because my experience with that C-suite, reporting into CEOs in the past and understanding where cybersecurity sits within their headspace, it's quite interesting how it differs from individual to individual. And this pressure that they feel to understand, but because we've created this whole lexicon of terminology within our own environments, sometimes it's confusing. So I wanna really break this point about being sort of constructively disruptive by adding in simplicity. And I know that sounds simple, but actually it isn't for a very complicated topic. So the CyberTree Paradox was born. And then from that, we, created a podcast and, creating digital content, but also accessibility to technical knowledge and advisory. I think it's really interesting in a current kind of marketplace where we're still using accountants to talk about cybersecurity, which is just astonishing. You've got your big tier 1 organizations that will rely on another big tier 1 organization who have no specialty in cybersecurity, but you don't talk to cybersecurity people, which is just baffles me. So, this accessibility to information and therefore advice, I think should be free, but it isn't. It's a very costly thing. So I'm on this mission to drive that accessibility. That's a really good question. I'm everything at the moment. So we're a startup. We're very much in our infancy. So, I'm pretty much running, marketing, sales. I run the whole cybersecurity service function. We leverage actually a lot of good global talent. And one of the things that's really special about what we do is we're trying to introduce this sort of consumption-based model into the marketplace, which is you pay for what you get, and we don't waste time with fun and funky presentations. It's really, let's get down to brass tacks, and it saves you time and saves us time. And actually, we're very outcome focused. At the moment, it's all about building out the service and developing our documentary series, and building out the podcast and sort of generating a little bit of social media interaction. So yeah, I'm pretty much everything for everybody and myself. I suppose that's hashtag startup life, right? I think the geek inside of me just loves the tech. I'm fascinated by some of the things that we can do with technology. And I think the advancements in technology, especially with AI and ML now being, a major part in, where we're going to go, and the concept of, the application of quantum computing, it blows my mind a little bit, because everything we know about security when it comes to quantum computing will be thrown out the window. You would theoretically be able to break every encryption code on the planet within a second, if we ever got to the point with an operational quantum computer. So it's this imaginary, this sort of second stage part of technical evolution that we're going to see, which is going to make cybersecurity very interesting, because you have quantum computing, you've got to have quantum cybersecurity as well, which is an interesting field to talk about. The other part I really like is about the psychology. So the psychology of security and why we find it so difficult to deploy within organizations. Why is it always an uphill battle? And it boils down to behavior and culture, and examining why actually we behave in a particular way is because that's something we've learned and something we've been taught all of our lives. So unteaching somebody something is difficult, but unteaching them something about cybersecurity is even more difficult. So I like that challenge. I like going into organizations and observing how that psychological cultural picture sits within that business framework, and then what they're doing to address it. So if you think about the way we try to educate people generally, if you're a financial services institution, that's 22 other, back office functions that want you to do a presentation of some sort. They want you to do a course of some sort, could be anything from health and safety to, business continuity to disaster recovery. And cybersecurity is just one other thing that's sort of nipping at the heels of, everybody. You come in, you do your assessment, you go away. The likelihood of you learning anything is nil. So we've got to change the way we think. We have to be dynamic in the way that we try to teach people. And not everybody's the same. There are people out there that are, on the spectrum that, their first main engagement may not necessarily be about talking to people. You mentioned, penetration testers, actually a lot of pen testers I know are on the spectrum, and they don't like talking, but they're damn good at their jobs. But we don't make, way or capability or follow through with some of that. And I think that's a bit of a disappointment. So it's about, again, changing the norm and pushing us forward, to be slightly more recognizable. And I think that's exciting. And I suppose lastly, the most exciting thing for me is I wake up every day and I know that I love what I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And I think that's key. And I think everyone should sort of bear that in mind. If you don't love what you do, don't do it. You're just going to cause yourself damage and hurt. And if you think about what's next in terms of digitization, one truly kind of exciting thing is Internet of Touch. There was some research done through a UK-based university recently about how they could help those that had been impacted through, loss of sensation and touch through their fingers or their arms, or for, particular amputees where they were building prosthetics, but actually it's a glove that you could put on your hand and it would send sensory information to the person that was wearing their prosthetic. But also you could do things, otherworldly applications where if you didn't know how to play the piano, you could put these gloves on and somebody that played the piano would then play and it would be like you're playing the piano. So there's an emergence of technology that's going to be absolutely astonishing. And I think that emergence means that there are going to be ways to break it. Because nothing is 100% secure. So it's going to be how we're going to tackle that, how we're going to, we had the same issue with the Internet of Things and connected homes. And, I think there's a first court case that's taking place in America about somebody that murdered his partner. using Internet of Things and a connected home, and then try to disguise it up. So we're seeing, with everything, this escalation in terms of cyber war, which has been going on for a number of years, but it's now de facto. We know we have nation states that attack each other. We know that nation states are developing malicious code to attack each other that then ends up in the wild, and causes lots of havoc. So, I think there's going to be a big view on nationalization, even if you think about the Middle East, with the United Arab Emirates, first country, to have nuclear power, relaxation with Israel being the first country to ever strike a physical target as a result of a cyber attack. So we're seeing lots of different things. I love that question. So, having the opportunity to work in different locations, having the opportunity to experience different cultures has 100% expanded my own approach to the way that I was able to digest things in a slightly different way, because culturally things are different. The importance of things are different as well. Having the opportunity to work in Japan, you learn very quickly about hierarchical structures, but also the care and due diligence you need to take in the way that you communicate, which also then made me realize actually the privacy of individuals is paramount. They take it really seriously, even legislatively, to the degree where if a organization is breached, the CEO is publicly humiliated in the press. So culturally, they took cybersecurity and privacy very seriously. Adversely, when I was in Hong Kong, it was all very transactional. You're dealing with regulators that have a set criteria of things that you need to do, and if you didn't follow them, you're in trouble. And it had to be to the way that they wanted to do it. So again, it taught me about the inflexibility of certain statutes and organizations. But again, working in the UK, much more liberal, working on the continent, it's all different. And I think you have to grasp that in the cybersecurity landscape, when you're dealing with regulatory environments that are spread across the globe, everything is different. It's about how do you bring that all together to form, if you're a CISO, going back to the earlier question, how do you bring all of that knowledge together to form a single effective strategy that's going to help you protect your organization at a global level? And there's a lot of giving and there's a lot of up and down and back and forth, but you want to apply basic hygiene to your environment. You want to just keep it simple. And where you have the nuance of, cultural difference or regulatory difference, then apply that in a sensible, logical way. But it has definitely, Dubai is so different. If I was being honest about the Middle East, 10 to 15, in some cases, probably 20 years behind the curve, when it comes to good, effective cyber hygiene. Those international organizations that, have, set up here, kind of leading the way. Local institutions still need a lot of education, and they need a lot of expertise. And I think, again, going back to the point I was making about Dubai now being a nuclear power generator, you see this massive influx, after the signing of, the diplomatic relations with Israel. You've got a massive set of Israeli companies here setting up, selling cybersecurity services. So, the landscape's changed, but I think culturally it's taught me again a huge amount. Number one, research. Do your research, understand what aspect of cybersecurity you want to get into, because there are lots of different avenues. There are lots of different pathways. There are lots of organizations that can help you, especially if you're talking about anyone, between the age of 8 and 13. So if there are any parents out there that want their kids to learn, you should, start Googling coding classes for 18 to 13-year-olds. Actually, a lot of schools in London are promoting that as well, from an educational standpoint. There are lots of good cybersecurity online training courses that you can take that tests your current knowledge for free. There are organizations that, if you are serious about cybersecurity apprenticeships, I know a few that are running apprenticeships. If anyone is interested in an apprenticeship and you're leaving college this year or next year and you're interested, generally I post a lot of this stuff on LinkedIn, but apprenticeships are an interesting thing. I mean, the government made a bit of a boo-boo, a couple of weeks ago with the robot and the dancer about retraining, but it was quite interesting. So there are UK government initiatives definitely around retraining into cybersecurity specific fields. I think one of the key things about this profession is to read. You have to read a lot, and it can take a lot of time to become knowledgeable. I'm talking from a 25-year perspective, and not all of it was easy, especially some of the technical aspects of this job, which can be quite taxing. So, we've got governance, you've got risk, you've got compliance, you've got engineering, you've got monitoring, you've got threat intelligence, you've got access management. It's a huge discipline. So have a look at some of those disciplines and really hone in on where you want to start. But if you're just walking into the industry and you're thinking about a change in career and whatnot, then go back to basics. Start at a very basic level. Now, you could be super intelligent and pick up pen testing in a couple of hours. Actually, for some it's not difficult, but there are plenty of resources out there that can help your focus and help you drive and make significant change. Yeah.